She thought she did well with the party, playing hostess, when everything wanted to blur around her. She talked and ate and served and replenished. She watched the booth grill ribs and chicken and burgers as if it was just another summer party on a Sunday afternoon. She played cornhole and booshie, screwed more beer and wine into ice-filled, galvanized tubs. She dodged, as best she could, the broad hints and the direct questions about her and Booth, and finally took a break from it all in the shade with Tracy and a frozen margarita. No party like Booth's summer bash. I can believe it. People brought enough food to feed an army on top of what he made, which was enough to feed an army. I've never in my life spent that many hours in the kitchen. You look so good together. No, no, I'm not asking, she said, when Miranda gave her a sidelong look. I'm just saying. I know people have asked, or pretended not to ask. Everybody loves Booth. You're the first woman he's had to co-host this party, the first he's been with this long. You extended your lease, but Miranda looked over to where Booth tossed horseshoes, so relaxed, so calm, exchanging high fives with his partner when he tossed a ringer. We're working a few things out. I have a feeling we're going to lie around tomorrow like slugs, then work those things out. I like both of you a lot, so I'm just going to say I know how I hope things work out. She handled it, Miranda thought, handled all of it, even though the last stragglers didn't leave until after 10. She handled it until Booth came downstairs in a blonde wig, with a goatee and carrying a bag. Mags will be here in a minute to pick me up. 24 hours, Miranda. Don't be late. She grabbed him, held on. Please, don't be late. It would be best if you stayed in the house. It's supposed to rain anyway. We stayed in all day, slept in, cleaned up. Sorry about leaving you with that. It's nothing. People insisted on helping clean up when I just wanted them out. We stayed in, we slept in, we had sex. I'd appreciate having sex. Watched movies, took naps. What did we eat? Party leftovers. Her breath wanted to back up in her lungs. You never left the house. Neither of us did. Don't worry about that. It's an if anyway. That's Mags, he said, when he checked his phone. She's picking me up down the road. I have to go. He kissed her, ran a hand down her braid. Get some sleep. See you tomorrow night. Gosh. Okay. Break a leg. Don't be late. I've got this, he said, and left her. She looked at her watch and started the countdown. He changed in Mags's apartment into his work clothes and was on his way to Lake Charles when Sebastian called the drop phone. Rustles through the first layer. Stick to the timetable and let me know when you hit the alarms. How close are you? About 20 minutes out. He looked at Jock for confirmation. About. I'm sticking close to the speed limit. Driving like an old lady in bifocals. I'll let you know when we go silent. When he ended the call, Jock looked at him. You're sure this one's good enough to get in? I laid it out for him. He wants the money. He'll get in. But he started to sweat it when Jock pulled up to the drop-off point. I've got to go silent from here. Drive around if you have to. I'll signal when I'm in the clear. Don't worry about me, I've got you. He had just started to call Sebastian when the phone signaled. Thank you, Jesus. Thank me. Do you hear that? Through the phone, Booth heard the alarms, the sirens, and closed his eyes. Yeah, I hear. I wish you could see. Lights, so many lights. The house is bright as Christmas. Where is he? He nearly made it out of the house. Nearly. The woman tackled him as he ran through the door, and now he's on the ground with her gun pointed at his head. The police are nearly there. And you? At the drop-off, going silent. I'll get back to you. Trap that pig of a man, Jock said, as Booth got out of the car. That's the plan. He had a 10-minute hike and took it at a light jog. He could see it all in his mind, the various ways he'd planned it out over the years. Refined it after making the same trip every time he'd visited New Orleans. Not for profit this time, he thought. Not altogether for survival. This was a very nice blend of payback and justice. And whatever happened after, if the final part fell, he'd pay whatever price was demanded for delivering that blend. When he reached the compound, he deactivated the sensors and climbed the wall in the gap between cameras. There was always a gap if you knew how to find it. He reset the sensors and kept going fast and steady. He stopped and crouched at the first outbuilding, storage for the landscape crew that came twice weekly. Security lights beamed, added a wash to the gardens and grass. A fountain tinkled musically, and in the near grove of trees an owl called. He looked toward the gatehouse, lights on there, as guards monitor the cameras on 6-hour shifts. Exterior and interior, except for certain more private areas. Laporte's bedroom suite, his treasure room. He made the next dash with a map of the cameras in his head, and from the shelter of trees studied the sturdy trellis of purple bougainvillea, a short sprint. He bounced for a moment, then hit the remote that bubbled the power for 2 seconds. When it steadied, he was climbing. Weak spot. Second floor terrace. French doors. Locked with a 6-digit alarm. He dealt with the deadbolt first, then the lock set. He suspected Laporte programmed no more than 30 seconds for the alarm. One he'd learned changed every 6 days. One with a secondary 4-digit backup. Maybe 10 seconds for that. He got to work, focused on the flashing numbers, then reset for the backup. And took the moment. Dark, silent house. Laporte sleeping in a sumptuous bed, in a sumptuous suite, perhaps with a sumptuous companion. Tomorrow won't be a good day for you, he thought. Not a good day at all. He started out, scanned the hallway, stepped over the red beams of motion detectors, and made his way downstairs. The office would be locked, of course, and there would be the camera to deal with. But they wouldn't record on the guards' monitors. Those were for Laporte. He dealt with the lock, eased the door open, shut the cameras down. If Laporte had insomnia, checked his office feed, it all went to hell. He checked the bookcase behind the desk for a mechanism and ignored the line of sweat running down his back. It would be there. It had to be, because there was a room behind this one, and this was the only way in or out. Too long, he thought as he searched. He needed the cameras back on. He glanced back at the desk, crouched down. Idiot, he murmured, and pressed a button. The bookcase eased open to the vault door behind it. Okay, a little more time here. Once again, he got to work. He worked the tumblers, worked the grid. Tricky, tricky. He paused, circled his neck, and got back to it. Longer, much longer than he'd anticipated. More than an hour inside, he thought. He needed to get the hell out. He could still run. Back to Miranda, ask her to run with him, anywhere. And once again, Laporte would take his life, his choices, his fate away. Not this time. 2 hours until sunrise, and he was close, too close to toss it in. When the last number fell, he pulled open the door. Of all the rooms of its kind he'd seen, this was the most plush. A palace designed for one man, one ruler, one tyrant. The red beams crisscrossed the room. Booth took out a phone, recorded it every inch. The gold, the ivory, the porcelain and the marble. The jewels, the art, priceless antiques, exquisite lamps, Ming vases, figures carved in alabaster. He looked at the painting he'd stolen, the glory of that Turner sunrise. He took a photo of it and of the sculpture that had cost him all those years with Miranda. He recognized other pieces taken from museums, private homes, rooms like this one. Some of those thefts had cost lives, he knew that, too. He danced over, under, around the beams to an empty pedestal. He noted the single downlight that would illuminate it. He wondered if Laporte had had it custom-made in anticipation. Booth took out the goddess, set her on the marble. Only for a little while, he murmured. He won't keep you here, I swear it. He won't keep any of you. He made the next recording, took another photo. Then stepping out, he locked the vault, recorded, closed the bookcase, recorded. He retraced his steps, just a shadow drifting through a dark house. When he climbed down, he hit the remote for his quick sprint. When he landed on the far side of the wall, he checked the time. 2 hours, 43. A solid 43 longer than planned. He might be a little late after all. Once he signaled Jock, he started his jog back to the sun broke the night. Back as the sun broke the night and bloomed rosy in the east. Birds awoke to sing to it. When he checked in with Sebastian, he learned Russell sang with them. You took your time, Jock said when Booth got in the car. Just a little extra complication, but we're good. He set the phone between them. It's all on there. You can do your magic. Can and will. Why don't you drive, and I'll start now. You can do it from the car? I think by the time we get home, the police, the FBI, will have a very nice gift, wrapped pretty and tied in a big fat bow. Pull over. At midnight, Miranda walked to the floor. He was late, damn it. Already an hour late. Mags had assured her he was fine, had boarded the flights from New Orleans to D.C., and was currently in custody. But all she could imagine was him being dragged off the plane at the airport, cuffed, and charged. Otherwise, he should be back. They said everything went according to plan, but this wasn't the plan. Then she heard the door open. She raced downstairs, and there he was, holding a very sad bouquet of flowers in cellophane. "You're late," she said, then sat down on the steps and burst into tears. Don't, please. I'm sorry. And the flowers are really lame. Max told you everything was fine, didn't she? But you weren't here. Give me those damn flowers." After snatching them, she buried her face in them and shed more tears. "Are the cups on their way?" "Not here," he said, and smiled and brushed away her tears. "Everything is fine. Everything worked. Not only did Russell roll, but there's the money trail and the anonymous tip, a recording of Laporte's treasure room, the goddess. There's also another payment he made to another account they won't be able to track back. Looks like the chameleon to me. He hired him, right? But the deal went sour, so he hired Russell. But the chameleon put the fake in place, then set Laporte up. He sent her the recording. Renegade on a deal," Booth said cheerfully. "Pay the price. I really want a Coke. Let me get a Coke, and I'll walk you through the whole thing." "You're not even tired." "Pumped. Really pumped. He could have danced his way to the moon and back. I'd sleep for a week once I crash, but pumped. Let's have a Coke." "I'm having wine. I didn't want to drink anything in case I had to bail you out, or bake a cake, my first, with a file in it." In the kitchen, he opened the doors to let the night in. "I needed to make sure it all worked. At Laporte's in D.C. A lot of threads, Miranda." "I don't know what you're talking about. We've been home all day. It rained all morning and into the afternoon." He poured her wine, opened a Coke for himself. "Anybody call? Come by?" "Seska called mid-afternoon, just to say what a great party. I told her you'd fallen asleep watching Casablanca, and I might take a nap myself." "I don't see me falling asleep during Casablanca." "You were really tired after all that sex." He grinned. "Okay then. The cops might come by. I'm thinking not for more than a tie-up, since it's all right there, every step he took, and the files he kept on me, you, others. We're the latest, which is why, if he tries to push it on me, he chose us." "I'm not worried about it. I'm really not. I'm going to put these sad, sweet flowers in water." He had his emerald ring that would look great on you. A little flashy at about 10 carats, but you could pull it off. I resisted it. Good choice. I've been in the house twice before. I know. No, you don't. I've been in the house twice when he wasn't there, to see if I could get in, to see the setup. He didn't have the vault last time, or the desk button, but it's been a few years, so it took longer." "You've broken into his house before?" "Practice runs." He drank some Coke, and he's really beefed up his personal museum. There's a diamond, Russian white, beautiful teardrop pendant. I don't know who did that job for him, not for certain, but I know the woman it belonged to was beaten to death for it." "And you think it was Russell?" Because she understood now, clearly now, she nodded. "That's why you chose Russell." It factored in. He sang on Laporte. I think Laporte will return the favor. What I know is it's done, and they're both going to spend pretty much forever behind bars." She studied him now, carefully, pumped as he'd said, that came across loud and clear, but adrenaline faded. Is it enough for you, Harry? He opened his mouth, shut it again. Max told me. I haven't been Harry in a really long time. And you're Booth to me. You'll always be Booth to me. But I'm asking Harry, is it enough? Yeah. He let out a breath and met her eyes directly. It's enough. More than enough. It's right. Good. For me too. Now, I want you to tell me about it, start to finish. But I have some things to say first. I'll get better flowers next time I'm late. She touched a very droopy nose. I should hope so, but that's not it. She sat, swiveled to him on the counter stool. I've never understood why some people say they love someone, and I think they mean it, and want to build a life with that someone and mean that too. But then they start trying to change that other person, the one they love. If you love someone, you love them, and that's it. Would you agree? Sure. Good. So I'm not going to ask you if you're going to continue your night work. I'd expect you to be honest with me about it. Hold on. I'm not done. But not done. My father's coming back in a week or two, and he and Deborah plan to stop in D.C., drive down to see me. I have to tell him. Tell him what? Everything. Not done, she said before he could object. I don't lie to my dad. That's a hard line. He's certainly not going to turn his only child over to the police. But to seal the deal, to cover all the ground, you're going to have to marry me. Wait, what? I will insist you buy, not steal, my ring, but that's my only requirement on that, and it's another hard line. Satisfied, she picked up her wine. Let's walk outside. I've been cooped up all day. Miranda, he pushed up to follow her. Gorgeous night. So, to continue, I don't want a big, splashy wedding. I will want the most fabulous dress, but that's on me. I think we should get married here. Because people love you here, and I've gotten very attached to here. We can work it around spring break, or winter break if you're in a hurry. I'm flexible. You're going to keep teaching, aren't you? Miranda, of course you are. She rolled right over him as smoothly as she had over getting coffee between classes at college. You love it, about kids. The flutter, bat wings, that started in his stomach spread up to his chest. Kids? You're both only children, and I'd like to break that cycle. I insist on two. We'll see how we do. Then I'm open to a third if we're both on that page. But two is firm. On a half-turn, she gave the house a considering study, then nodded. We'll probably have to add onto the house at some point, but that's down the road. And in the immediate, I need a lot more room for my clothes and personal items. I think that covers it for now. I should have made a list. Can we back up? Way, way up, he said with a wide, rolling gesture. Back to that part where you said if you love somebody, you don't try to change them. You want me to go through everything again? No, no. Let's just start there. Do you love me? Of course I love you. Her eyebrow quirked up. Are you suddenly stupid? Not just bat wings are flapping now, but a swarm in the entire Batcave. You never said, when I told you, you never said. Timing, Ruth. It's about timing. Now's the time I wanted to tell you. The ugly stuff is behind. We start from here. She loved him, and that equaled for him the alpha and omega. You don't care that I am a thief? I love you. She laid a hand on his cheek, rubbed the stubble all the way through. He grabbed that hand, held it. I don't need to do that anymore. I was going to tell you, ask you to give me a chance. I don't need that when I have you. The empty spaces, the lost places, you fill them up. This was my last job. You don't say you're going into your last job or you'll wreck it. But I can. After it's done, it's done. I am done. I'm okay with that too. The house, your family home. I expect my father and Deborah to have a lot of happy years there. I called a realtor about selling my townhouse this afternoon. This was, of course, after we talked some of this through. Had all that sex. Sure, that follows. One day we might want to move into that generational family house, or we might not. I don't care. But I am firm on marriage, on 2, possibly 3 kids, and more room for my stuff. Oh, and I'll continue to chop and stir and order takeout, but don't expect more. So, are you going to marry me or not? Miranda, he thought. His Miranda, and couldn't help himself. I, with a heart as willing as bondage. Heir of freedom, here's my hand. Tears swirled into her eyes as she gripped it, and mine with my heart in it. Can we make it winter break? It would be like a year since you came back to me. We came back to each other. I love a winter wedding. You really should kiss the hell out of me now. I'm going to get to that. Would you like an orangery? She laughed. Yes. And we could add a 3rd floor. You'd have a hell of a view from your office, and since I can open up the master closet now, take out that area, plenty more room for your stuff. Looks like I have to kiss the hell out of you. She set down her wine, laid both hands on his face. You told me once it was always me, just me. And you said just now I filled up all the empty spaces and lost places. It's always been you, Booth, just you. No empty or lost for either of us now. They kissed by the river under the moonlight, held close, kissed again. About telling your father. Hard line, Booth. Okay, okay. He drew her in, rested his forehead on hers, and knew, while the Red Goddess would find her home now, his had come home to him. 1 year later. Fingers linked with Miranda's, Booth stood in London. Great museum. Just part of the crowd, he thought. One of the many who came to view the extraordinary diamond known as the Red Goddess. She sat, thanks to the generosity of the Lady Jane de Bois, on a marble pedestal behind thick glass. He knew, of course, the pedestal would be wired, the glass blast-proof. He also figured he could find ways around all that, if he were still in the business. But the goddess had found her home, her place, her purpose, just as he had found his. She looks right here, and, I have to say, happy here. When Miranda tipped her head to his shoulder, he nodded. Yeah, she does. I'm glad we came to see her. I'm glad so many others have and will. No regrets? He brought her hand with its wedding set, bought and paid for, to his lips. Not a single one. He said goodbye to the stone and heard someone remark in tones of deep disappointment, "It's not even shiny. It looks like a big red lump. When Miranda laughed, Booth shook his head before he walked away with his personal red goddess. Why don't we find a nice cafe, sit down for something to eat? Booth, the baby is the size of a pea. I don't have to sit every 10 minutes or eat every hour. It's still in there, and that was a wonder. And both of us are ready for our first trip to Florence. Detouring here closed one door. Let's go open another. We could do that, but one more door first. Laporte fired another team of lawyers. Smiling, Miranda shook back the hair she'd left loose. It must be frustrating for him. Nobody's giving him what he wants. Even with the deal he made, Russell will never get out of prison. Most of Laporte's assets are frozen, his treasure room's empty, and he's got a tracker on his ankle until his trial. He smiled himself. I'm hearing buzz that there's talk about revoking his bail. Ah. Booth swung an arm around Miranda's shoulder as they walked out of the museum into a cloudy day in London. It already feels like justice, Miranda commented, but I barely got to emote about my horrible mistake in New York. They had him cold. Hadn't he made sure of it? We were just threads to snip off. He didn't tell her and hoped she never learned. They'd found Celine Warwick's body, what was left of it, washed up on a beach in Cannes, just days after he had planted the stone in Laporte. She hadn't run far enough or fast enough. Doors closed, he thought. Time to leave them that way. You're sure you don't want to sit? Eat something? I'm absolutely sure. Are you going to nag at me for the next 8 months? Probably. You are my first wife, and that's my first kid in there. The Smokies, the ocean, New Orleans, the redhead in Shakespeare class. I get caught up on firsts. I'm your wife. I'm your last wife, and don't forget it. Let's just head back to the airport. Maybe Mr. Private Plane can get them to take off a little early. I can work with that. Before he could try to hail a cab, she shuffled him over to the far end of the sidewalk, looked up at him with those sea-witch eyes. I'm glad we stopped here first. I'm glad we're going to have 2 fabulous weeks in Italy, where my well-traveled husband will show me everything before we go home and get a puppy. With the baby coming, they'll grow up together, and the dog gets to keep me company when I work and you're at school. Hardline, Booth. I was right about my father, and I'm right about a puppy. He couldn't deny the first part, since Ben hadn't killed or maimed him. Before we get started on all that, she continued, I'm going to tell you I love you, and you make me stupidly happy. Now kiss the hell out of me. I can do that. So he did. And when they got into a cab to start the next part of the journey, he thought of his mother, of the lives he'd led. He thought about the thrill and simple satisfaction of knowing his night work now meant Miranda, a baby, and a big sloppy dog. A life of his choosing, he thought, and linked his fingers with hers, more precious than diamonds. And that, everyone, completes the end of the story, Nightwork by Nora Roberts. I hope it was a pleasant read for you. I actually quite liked the story. Again, if you have any requests, any books in particular that you would like me to read, more than happy and willing to do so for you. This is for you. Again, this is the end of Nightwork, and until I read to you again, not sure what book I'll be reading next, but look out for another story. All right? Sleep well, sleep peacefully, wherever you are in the world. Good night.